I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding. Let that sink in. Not because I was traveling, not because we had a fight, not even because I said I didn't want to come. No, they didn't invite me. Because, according to my mother, you wouldn't have anything appropriate to wear. That's what she actually said, word for word. And then she laughed. So did my sister and my aunt. Like it was this funny little moment, a harmless joke, a throwaway comment. But it wasn't. It was a line that cut so deep, I felt it echo in my chest. Because I'm not just someone who wears clothes. I design them. Clothes are my life, my dream, my work, my art. I had spent years sketching, sewing, and stitching together a dream that none of them took seriously. And now, my own family was using that dream to exclude me, to humiliate me. They thought I'd stay silent, that I'd sit at home and sulk while they celebrated Savannah like some perfect porcelain doll in white lace. But the universe has a funny sense of timing, because 1 hour before the ceremony, Savannah's perfect designer dress ripped, right down the side. The boutique was closed. The stylist was gone. No one knew what to do. And then all eyes turned toward me, because standing in that doorway was the girl they left out, the one who had nothing to wear, holding a garment bag. And I said just one thing: try this one. I wasn't always the outsider in my family. Not exactly. Growing up, I did what a lot of younger sisters do. I adored my big sister, Savannah. She was loud and funny and dramatic, always the center of attention, and I wanted to be just like her. I followed her everywhere, watched her do her hair, helped her pick outfits. When we were little, she used to let me draw on her old shirts, and we'd play fashion show in the living room with Nana June clapping along from the recliner. That's where it started. Designing, I mean. At first, it was just sketches in my school notebooks, ball gowns, jackets, weird futuristic things. But by middle school, I was staying up late watching YouTube tutorials on sewing machines and hand-stitching scraps of fabric I found in thrift stores. While other kids were on TikTok, I was learning how to draft patterns by tracing my old jeans onto newspaper. When I told my mom I wanted to be a fashion designer, she smiled. A polite, closed-lipped smile, the kind you give when your kid says they want to be a fairy or a pirate. That's sweet, Alina, but don't you think you should aim for something more practical? I was 13. Savannah wanted to be a wedding planner at the time, and instead of telling her to be practical, my mom bought her bridal magazines and helped her plan a mock ceremony for fun. We all played along, even me, with my construction paper bouquet and pillowcase veil. I still remember the dress I designed for that. It was too big, all ruffles and lace. But Savannah actually wore it. Alina made this, she told her friends, smiling at me like I was her little protege. That was the last time she introduced me like that. As we grew older, our paths split. Savannah became the high school queen. Prom court, cheer squad, flawless selfies. She mastered the art of being adored. I, on the other hand, became quiet. More awkward, more invisible. My weekends were spent in fabric stores, not football games. I wasn't cool, I didn't date. I wasn't fashionable by their standards. Ironic, I know. And so I was labeled the artsy one. Which, in my family, was just a kinder way of saying the weird one. Still, I never stopped working. By college, I had a small Etsy shop. I did part-time gigs, hemming gowns, and making prom dresses for girls who wanted something unique. I even got into a design program in Chicago, but didn't go because my parents said they couldn't justify the cost of an arts degree. Meanwhile, they were planning Savannah's destination engagement party. It wasn't just favoritism, it was this persistent, quiet dismissal. 1,000 tiny cuts over the years. When Savannah got her dream job at an event firm, everyone celebrated with a family dinner. When I launched my first small collection online, no one noticed. I even offered to make dresses for Savannah's engagement shoot. "That's sweet," she said, "but we're going for a more elegant look." And that's the thing. In their eyes, my work wasn't elegant. It wasn't real. It was a hobby, something I'd grow out of eventually. They never saw the late nights, the bleeding fingers, the client emails, the trial and error, the joy I felt when a stranger sent a message saying, "This dress made me feel beautiful." They didn't want to see it. To them, I was the girl with messy buns and thread stuck to her sweater, the one who never wore makeup, the one who didn't fit their polished, curated image of a picture-perfect family. So when the wedding plan started and I wasn't included in the bridal party, I figured maybe it was just oversight. When I wasn't invited to the dress shopping trip, I swallowed my pride. But when I didn't even get a formal invitation to the ceremony, I finally asked. And my mom looked at me with that same polite smile and said, "Well, honey, we weren't sure what you'd wear. You know Savannah wants everything to look perfect." They laughed, and I nodded, heart pounding in my ears, because what else could I do? That was the moment I realized. They didn't just forget me. They'd made a decision. I wasn't part of the picture anymore. Not unless they needed something, not unless it was convenient. But that's the funny thing about being underestimated for so long. You start to get used to doing things on your own, quietly, without permission, without applause, without family. And sometimes, that's where the real transformation begins. If there's one thing my family has always been good at, it's making people feel small, especially when you're not living up to their expectations. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I didn't get a degree that made people clap at dinner tables. I didn't marry a doctor or an investment banker or anyone for that matter. I didn't check off the boxes that made someone worth bragging about in the Reyes household. Instead, I worked part-time at a boutique. I lived in a small apartment with my best friend, Lena. I poured every spare dollar into bolts of fabric and sewing tools. I worked on commissions that barely paid the rent, but each one was a step closer to something that was mine. My family didn't understand that kind of ambition, not the kind that doesn't come with a corner office or a job title in a corporate brochure. They would say things like, "It's so nice you're staying busy," or "That's cute. Are you still doing your little sewing thing?" Little. That word stung more than any insult, because it wasn't meant to be cruel. It was worse. It was dismissive, pitying. Like I was a toddler playing dress-up instead of a woman building something from the ground up. Savannah leaned into it more than anyone. She'd smile across the dinner table with perfect lipstick and say things like, "Alina's always been the creative one. She made me this horrible denim purse in middle school. Remember that, Mom?" And they'd all laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was easy. Because I had become the safe target. The one who wouldn't fight back, the background sister. And I played into it. I stayed quiet. I smiled. I sipped water while they toasted Savannah's promotions and scrolled through photos of her and her fiancé's matching workouts and engagement shoots. I was expected to be grateful just to be in the room, but even that changed with the wedding. This time, I wasn't even welcome at the table. No invitation, no mention, no phone call. Just a text from my aunt asking what I was planning to wear. A text sent by mistake because she assumed I was invited. That's how I found out I wasn't. When I asked my mother about it, she said it without hesitation, as if she had rehearsed the line, "We just didn't want you to feel uncomfortable, sweetie. Savannah's wedding is very upscale. We didn't think you'd have anything appropriate." As if I didn't know what to wear to a wedding. As if I hadn't designed formal gowns for dozens of clients in the last year. As if appropriate meant something they thought I couldn't ever be. The irony was crushing. The very thing I built my life around, creating beautiful clothing, was now being used as the reason I was excluded from my own sister's most important day. They had reduced me to a punchline, a liability, an image risk. They didn't see me as a designer. Not even as a woman, really. Just some girl in the corner who still played dress-up and couldn't be trusted not to embarrass them in front of their country club friends. I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was numb. The kind of numb that settles deep in your stomach and makes everything feel a little colder, a little quieter. I went home, sat on the floor of my bedroom, and looked at the dress I had been working on. Something elegant, ivory, floor length, meant for a client who had backed out at the last minute. It hung there on the mannequin, unfinished but beautiful. It was exactly the kind of dress Savannah would have wanted. And that's when the shift happened. Not a dramatic snap or a tear-filled moment, just a quiet realization. They didn't see me because they chose not to. They didn't believe in me because they never tried to. They had already decided who I was supposed to be, and anything beyond that didn't fit their narrative. I was the underdog, not because I lacked talent, but because they refused to acknowledge it. But underdogs have something powerful, nothing to lose. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table anymore. If they didn't want me there, fine. I'd build my own, stitch by stitch, piece by piece, because I didn't need their approval to know my worth, and I sure as hell didn't need an invitation to prove I belonged. For a while, I tried to pretend it didn't bother me, that the wedding didn't matter, that their laughter, their comments, their lack of invitation was just another reminder that I was on a different path. And that was okay. But deep down, I wanted to be included, not out of jealousy or some desperate need to fit in, but because it was my sister. Despite everything, part of me still wanted to be there when she walked down the aisle. I wanted to be proud of her. I wanted to feel like family. That tiny, stubborn flicker of hope came one morning when I got a call from Nana June. She didn't bring up the wedding. She never did. She wasn't the type to take sides, but she always made it clear that she saw me, really saw me. Her voice was warm, crackling gently through the phone like a familiar old song. "So," she said, "what are you wearing to the big day?" My stomach tightened. "I'm not going, Nana." A long pause. "Why not?" "I wasn't invited." That pause got heavier, and then she whispered, "Oh, honey," like she'd just been told someone had died. I explained what Mom had said, that they didn't think I'd have anything appropriate, that they assumed I'd be uncomfortable, that Savannah didn't even acknowledge me when I tried to offer help. Nana June sighed. "You know, when Savannah was a kid, she once told me you were magic with scissors. You made her a skirt out of an old tablecloth and she wore it like it was Gucci. Don't let them erase that." We talked for another 15 minutes, mostly about her garden and her cat, but at the end she said something I didn't expect. "You should still get a dress, sweetheart, just in case." I laughed. "Just in case what?" "You never know." She hung up and I sat there for a long time, staring at my sewing machine like it might hold the answer. That conversation lit a spark. A stupid, naive little spark, but I held on to it like a thread. A few days later, I found myself walking through a fabric store, running my fingers along soft silks and structured satins, half convinced I was losing my mind. I told myself I was just browsing, maybe thinking ahead for a new client commission. But when I saw this pale blue charmeuse, my heart actually skipped. I bought 5 yards on the spot. Back at home, I spent hours sketching. The design wasn't for Savannah. It wasn't for a client. It wasn't even for the wedding. It was for me, for the version of me I wanted to become. The one who belonged in any room, not because someone invited her, but because she carried herself like she had every right to be there. The dress came together slowly, deliberately. Soft draping, sleek lines, no beading, no excess, just clean, stunning simplicity. I didn't know if I'd ever wear it, but it felt like a protest in silk, a quiet statement that said, "I am not what you think I am." Then, one morning, I got a notification on Instagram. Savannah had tagged everyone in her bridal party in a photo. Matching robes, champagne glasses, big smiles, and I wasn't there. No mention, no call, no "we forgot you" or "we're sorry," or even a passive-aggressive family text, just silence. My name wasn't even a shadow in the caption. I told myself I didn't care, that the dress was for me, that I didn't expect anything. But that night, when I tried the dress on in front of the mirror, something cracked. It wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about years of being looked over, talked over, laughed at. It was about every time I gave more than I got, Every time I played small so someone else could feel bigger. And for a moment, I thought about showing up anyway. Just walking in, uninvited, in that gown, and letting them see me. But I didn't. Instead, I sat down, took the dress off, and carefully zipped it back into its garment bag. I slid it under my bed and let the moment pass. The flicker of hope that maybe things could be different? Gone. I didn't know then that the universe wasn't closing the door. It was just waiting. Waiting for the moment it would swing open wide, with everyone inside scrambling for help, and me standing right there with the only thing they needed. But for now, all I knew was this. They had made their choice, and so had I. The confirmation didn't come through a dramatic confrontation or a heated argument. No one screamed at me. No one told me outright, "You're not wanted." It was quieter than that, more deliberate. The kind of betrayal that doesn't stab, it slices slowly, with precision. The wedding week arrived, and with it came the flood of family chatter. My phone buzzed constantly, group chats lighting up with logistics, photos, directions, last-minute hair appointments. None of them included me. At first I assumed they were just forgetting to tag me, that I'd missed something. I checked my email, my messages, even the family Facebook page. Nothing. Then I saw the post. Savannah's bridal countdown. 7 days, 6, 5. Each day she posted a new memory. From childhood to adulthood, moments with the people she cherished most. There were dozens of photos. Her with our cousins, her with childhood friends, her with our mom, our dad, even Nana June. Not a single one with me. Not even the fake wedding ceremony we'd staged as kids. Not even the photo I knew she had. The one where I'd made her a paper crown and a veil out of lace curtains. The one she used to keep in her room. Gone. Erased. Still, I held out hope for a message, a phone call, something. But on the day of the rehearsal dinner, my cousin Claire, who I hadn't seen in years, called me laughing. "Wait, you're not here?" "No," I said. "I wasn't invited." Her laughter stopped. "Oh, I just figured you're her sister." That word felt bitter in my mouth. Sister. I wasn't one anymore, at least not in the eyes of my own family, but the final blow didn't come until later that evening. It was a warm Friday night. I was home, curled up with tea and an old sketchbook, pretending not to care that my entire family was celebrating without me. That's when my phone rang. It was Lena, my roommate. She had just come back from the grocery store, wide-eyed and a little shaken. "Alina," she said, "I just ran into your mom at Whole Foods." My stomach tightened. She didn't recognize me at first, but when I said I was your roommate, she gave me this fake smile and said, "Oh, Alina's friend, how sweet. Tell her we wish she could have come to the wedding, but you know how it is. Everything's very formal, very curated. We didn't want her to feel out of place." I didn't say anything. Lena paused, then added, "She said it like you were an outsider. Like they were doing you a favor by not inviting you." That was the moment. That was the betrayal. Confirmed, solidified, and sealed. It wasn't about a dress. It wasn't about logistics or headcount or venue space. They didn't want me there because I didn't look like the person they wanted to show off, because I didn't fit into their designer fairy tale, because I was too real, too independent, too me. And instead of being proud that I'd followed my own path, built something from nothing, they were ashamed, embarrassed even, of my creativity, my work, my lack of polish. I was a threat to their image, and they handled it the only way they knew how. They cut me out. Savannah could have reached out. She could have said, "I want you there, even if it's complicated." But she didn't. She never even texted me back when I asked about the wedding. My mom? She made sure to tell someone else why I wasn't invited, not me, and my dad, silent, as usual, always letting Claudia take the lead while he played the passive, agreeable man. Even Nana June, who loved me more than any of them, hadn't said anything since that phone call. I felt humiliated, like I had been picked last for a team I didn't even want to play on. But here's the thing about humiliation. It hardens into resolve. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for a seat at a table that actively excluded me. I had spent too long trying to earn their approval, twisting myself into shapes that made them comfortable. No more. That night, I took the garment bag from under my bed and laid the dress out carefully. The blue charmeuse shimmered under my bedroom light, fluid like water, soft as a whisper. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever made, and they didn't even know it existed. Not yet, but they would. After Lena told me what my mother had said at the store, I sat in silence for nearly an hour, not crying, not pacing, just still. My mind wasn't racing the way it usually did. There were no dramatic fantasies of storming into the wedding wearing one of my dresses or telling them off in front of everyone. No rage, no tears, just a quiet, aching clarity. They had made their decision. Not just about the wedding, about me. I wasn't one of them anymore, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I thought I'd grown out of wanting their approval. I told myself for years that I didn't need it, that I didn't care. But the truth is, when it's your own family rejecting you, it cuts through every layer of independence you've worked so hard to build. It finds that small, vulnerable version of you. The little girl who used to make dresses out of pillowcases and hope someone would say, "Wow, that's amazing." And it tells her, "You're still not enough." I shut off my phone, ignored texts from old classmates asking if I was in town for the big wedding. I didn't want to explain that I wasn't invited. I didn't want their sympathy or their gasps or their forced, awkward replies. Instead, I spent most of the weekend in my apartment, drifting between numbness and waves of quiet devastation. I cleaned, I sewed, I listened to music I used to love but now just made me feel emptier. I kept thinking about what I could have done differently. Was I too distant, too quiet, too different from who they wanted me to be? Then I remembered. I did try. I tried for years. I showed up at family dinners even when I was the punchline. I sent Savannah birthday gifts, handmade, thoughtful things she never acknowledged. I texted my mom updates on my business. I invited them to a pop-up event I hosted with local designers last year. Not one of them showed up. They weren't waiting for me to change. They were waiting for me to disappear. And now that I was tucked away, unseen and unheard, they were satisfied. I don't know what was worse, the betrayal or the sense that they didn't think I'd push back, that they were so sure of my silence. That realization cracked something open. I started going through my old design journals, flipping through page after page of work I'd done in the past 2 years, the notes from clients, the reviews, the photos. I wasn't some amateur with a hobby. I had built something, built it, from the ground up, and not one of them knew. Not my mom, who used to brush me off every time I mentioned a new project. Not my dad, who never asked how I was doing unless Savannah was in the room and he needed to play fair. Not even Savannah, who used to beg me to make her Halloween costumes and now acted like I didn't exist. The isolation I felt that weekend wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, like I had been cast out of a family I had worked my whole life to belong to. But what they didn't know, what I was only just starting to realize, was that being cast out gave me freedom. I didn't have to shrink anymore, didn't have to apologize for not being like them, didn't have to keep chasing people who never planned to turn around. Still, the loneliness lingered. There were no congratulatory brunches, no champagne toasts, no spa days or sister sleepovers, just silence, just me and my work, and a garment bag with a dress inside it that I had no reason to wear, yet couldn't bring myself to put away. Lena tried to cheer me up. She cooked dinner, told me dumb jokes, even convinced me to watch cheesy rom-coms with her just to get me to laugh, but the ache sat deep in my bones. On Saturday night, the night of the actual wedding, I sat on our tiny balcony with a cup of tea, watching cars pass below. Somewhere across town, my whole family was gathered. Savannah was walking down an aisle, camera flashes lighting her up like a star, and I was alone. But even in that loneliness, something was shifting. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to come around. I wasn't sitting in silence because I was afraid. I was sitting in silence because I was done. Done trying to prove anything. Done feeling ashamed. Done shrinking. It was quiet. It was painful. But it was also mine. And I was finally ready to grow. When your own family turns their back on you, it's easy to believe the lie that no one sees you, that maybe you're the problem, that maybe if you'd just been a little more like them, a little more polished, a little more agreeable, a little more obedient, things would be different. That lie had wrapped itself tightly around my chest the night of Savannah's wedding. And then, like a small crack of light through a locked door, Lena knocked gently on my bedroom door, holding 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. "Emergency girls' night?" she asked with a soft smile. I didn't answer. I just moved over so she could sit next to me on the bed. We didn't talk for a few minutes. The only sound was the clink of ceramic mugs and the hum of traffic from the street below. Then she said, "You know, I've been friends with you for 3 years, and I've never once understood how your family doesn't worship the ground you walk on." I blinked. "What?" She looked over at me, dead serious. "I've watched you spend hours making a dress for a client you barely know. I've seen you take a pile of fabric and turn it into something people cry over when they wear it. And then I hear the way your mom talks to you, like you're some failure they need to tolerate. I don't get it. But I do know it's not about you." I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My throat tightened. No one had ever said something like that to me so plainly. "You know what my mom told me once?" Lena continued. She said, "If people can't see your worth, it says more about their vision than your value." And she was right. That was the first time I cried since everything happened. Not ugly sobbing, just a few quiet, unstoppable tears. Because the truth is, I didn't need 100 people to validate me. I needed one. One person who saw me for who I really was, not what I lacked or what I hadn't achieved by someone else's standards, but who I was becoming. And Lena had been there the whole time. She'd helped me photograph my first collection on our apartment roof when I couldn't afford a studio. She'd driven me across town at 2 a.m. to deliver a gown to a frantic bride. She'd eaten cold takeout with me on the floor after shows where I didn't sell a single piece, telling me it was only a matter of time. She believed when I didn't. She reminded me that I wasn't crazy for wanting more, that I wasn't selfish or dramatic or too sensitive the way my family always claimed. She didn't say, "Maybe they'll come around." She said, "You don't need them to." The next day, she surprised me with something that nearly made me collapse with gratitude. It was a domain name, alenariestudio.com. She bought it and said, "I figured it's time the world had a proper place to find your magic." My heart swelled. No one had ever invested in me like that, not with money, but with belief. And belief, real, unconditional belief, is the rarest kind of currency. We sat on the floor that afternoon and started building the site. She helped me pick out photos. I wrote my bio. We uploaded pieces I hadn't shown anyone yet. The dress I'd made during the wedding planning, the pale blue charmeuse gown, was our homepage. We titled it "The One They Didn't See Coming." It wasn't about revenge. It was about stepping out of the shadow I'd been shoved into for years. And that process, that act of being seen by even one person, gave me a strength I didn't know I had. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about my family. I was thinking about the future, what I could create, who I could become, what the world might look like if I stopped waiting for a seat at their table and started building my own. And in that small, sunlit room with my best friend and a fresh website ready to launch, I realized something. Maybe being left out of the wedding wasn't the curse I thought it was. Maybe it was the invitation I needed to walk my own aisle. It's funny how sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's not a dramatic confrontation or a mic drop moment. Sometimes the best revenge is quiet, unseen. It's choosing to grow in silence while the people who doubted you keep laughing, convinced you'll never change. That's exactly what I did. While my family was posting flower arrangements and bridal shower selfies, I was working. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't out of desperation. It wasn't about trying to prove anything to them. I was finally doing it for me. After Lena helped me launch the website, something inside me flipped. I stopped hesitating. I posted the gown, the one I'd made during those long, painful nights leading up to Savannah's wedding, on my Instagram and our new website. I titled it Resilience. It wasn't just a dress anymore. It was a message, a declaration, a turning point captured in satin. The feedback was immediate. A fashion blogger reposted it. One of her followers reached out for a custom commission. Then another, and another. I remember the first email that started with, "Hi, I'm getting married next spring and I saw your dress. Can we talk?" She didn't ask, "Where did you study?" She didn't ask, "Do you have a degree?" She said, "Your work speaks for itself." And that was all I'd ever wanted. Clients started trickling in, one by one. A singer wanted a gown for a video shoot. A woman in New York needed something dramatic for a charity gala. I worked late, sometimes until 3 or 4 in the morning, sewing under warm light with music playing softly in the background. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. And while I was stitching fabric, I was also stitching myself back together. Each dress felt like an affirmation. You are capable. You are talented. You are worthy. I kept my progress to myself. No announcements on Facebook. No tagging my family in success stories. I didn't want validation from them anymore. And that realization was liberating. They were still locked in their small, curated world, obsessed with appearances and surface-level perfection. Meanwhile, I was building something real, a brand, a reputation, a future. And the best part? They had no idea. They still thought I was sitting at home, sulking about not being invited. They probably imagined me as that same awkward little sister, the one with paint under her fingernails and tangled hair and nothing to wear. But they didn't know about the 3 clients I had lined up. They didn't know I'd filed the paperwork for an LLC. They didn't know a small bridal magazine had reached out for an interview. They didn't know the girl they had cast aside was now dressing women who wouldn't even blink at Savannah's stylist's rates. I didn't need to rub it in their faces. That wasn't the point. I was becoming someone who no longer needed their approval to breathe. My small apartment became a creative sanctuary. Lena helped me rearrange the living room so I had a real workspace. We turned a corner into a photography spot with white curtains and a ring light. She even helped model some of the dresses when I couldn't afford a professional. Slowly, my world was expanding, one confident step at a time, and with each stitch, I could feel the bitterness fading. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. I wanted pride. I wanted the freedom to wake up every morning and do what I loved without needing to explain or apologize for it. For so long, my family had made me feel small, like their approval was a currency I had to earn. But now I saw it differently. Their approval was a coupon, expired, worthless. I was building something far more valuable, self-respect, and I was doing it in silence. No clapping audience, no congratulatory dinners, just me, my machine, and a slow-burning fire that wouldn't go out. They didn't see me coming. And when the moment did come, when they needed help and all their polished perfection fell apart, they would have no idea that the person they excluded was now the only one who could save the day. Because while they were busy curating the perfect wedding, I was becoming the kind of woman people call in a crisis, not because she's convenient, but because she's extraordinary. As my world quietly transformed, my family remained frozen in theirs, oblivious, arrogant, and completely unaware of what was unfolding just beyond the edges of their curated reality. To them, I had vanished. A forgotten footnote. The eccentric younger sister who did something with fabric but wasn't important enough to include in the biggest family event of the year. I watched from the sidelines as they carried on, blissfully unaware. Savannah flooded social media with wedding prep content. Cake tastings, venue walkthroughs, spa days with the bridesmaids, handwritten vows captioned with hashtags like Forever Raise and Savan Sam Say Idio. Each post felt like a confirmation that they didn't just exclude me, they had rewritten the narrative entirely. In their version of the story, I didn't exist. My mother was the ringleader, of course. She'd always been obsessed with appearances, not just in the literal sense, but in the way everything looked to others. Growing up, it wasn't about who you were. It was about how you were perceived. When Savannah got engaged, my mom went into full production mode. She treated the wedding like a royal affair. Every detail had to be perfect. The floral arrangements had to be symmetrical. The photos had to capture timeless elegance. The guests had to be curated. Her word, not mine. That's why I was cut. Not because I was toxic. Not because I'd caused drama. But because I didn't fit the image. In her world, fashion designer meant famous, or at least fashionable. Not someone working out of a small apartment, posting handmade gowns on Instagram. She didn't understand the quiet grind of a creative career. She only respected results that came with a diploma or a corporate title. And then there was Savannah. She hadn't reached out once, not even after the dress reveal on my site went mildly viral. I wondered if she saw it. If she looked at the photo of me modeling the gown in front of our apartment window. My face half turned, the dress glowing in natural light. And felt anything at all. Jealousy? Regret? Pride? Probably not. More likely, she just scrolled past it thinking it was a photo shoot for someone else. In her mind, I was still the girl with frizzy hair and DIY outfits. The sister she outgrew. Savannah had always been surrounded by people who fed her ego, my mom included. They praised her taste, her style, her vision. They treated her like a bride and a brand. I knew how intoxicating that could be, but I also knew it was hollow. Because behind the scenes, I heard from a mutual cousin that things weren't going as smoothly as the online facade suggested. The wedding dress designer had ghosted them after multiple late edits. The fabric Savannah wanted was out of stock. Her bridal stylist was juggling too many clients and missed 2 fittings. There was tension, panic, pressure. But none of them reached out to me. Even though they knew what I did, even though they knew I could help. But that's the thing about people who see you as less than. They don't realize they might one day need you. They get so used to the idea that you're behind them, beneath them, irrelevant, that they stop looking at you altogether. I had become invisible by their design, and now they couldn't see me even if they tried. And still, I kept going. While they were taste testing $600 cakes, I was wrapping dresses for clients in soft tissue and hand-tying bows with satin ribbon. While Savannah's stylist forgot her veil, I was helping a bride in Atlanta get ready for her courthouse wedding, customizing lace gloves she cried over when she opened the box. I was booked through the next 2 months. My inbox was filling up. I wasn't just designing dresses anymore. I was building trust, reputation, impact. And the best part? None of it needed their approval. My growth wasn't fueled by spite anymore. It was rooted in something stronger, self-worth. But even so, I knew something was coming. I could feel it, that quiet, strange pull in the universe that tells you a storm is brewing. Because the more my family doubled down on ignoring me, the more obvious it became that they were setting themselves up for a moment they wouldn't see coming. And when that moment did arrive, when the dress ripped, the panic rose, and the polished illusion finally cracked, they would look around for someone to save them, and realize the only person who could was the one they left behind. The wedding was less than 48 hours away, and though I hadn't heard from anyone in my family, I could feel the storm swirling toward its inevitable collision. I wasn't sure why, but I couldn't bring myself to make any plans that weekend. I told Lena I wanted to stay close to home. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded and stocked the fridge with snacks. My dress, the one I'd made during those long, isolating nights, was now hanging freely in our apartment. I'd moved it from under the bed to a garment rack by the window. It wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't hiding anymore. It shimmered in the late afternoon sun, the pale blue charmeuse catching the light like liquid silver. It was elegant, minimal, and powerful. The kind of dress you wear when you've been quiet for too long, and you're finally ready to be seen. I didn't expect to use it, but I kept it pressed, steamed and ready, just in case. I wasn't rooting for disaster. Truly I wasn't, but I knew my family too well. They had built Savannah's wedding day like a house of glass, shiny and carefully arranged, but dangerously fragile. And sure enough, the cracks began to show. That morning, I woke up to a call from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. Then came a text from my cousin Claire. "Hey, random question. You still doing fashion stuff, like bridal stuff? Call me ASAP." I stared at the message, heart racing. Something had happened. I called her back. She picked up immediately, her voice high-pitched and breathless. "Alina, thank God, so listen. Savannah's dress, there was a problem. A big problem." I didn't say anything, I just listened. It ripped, like full-on tore. Right at the waist, something about the zipper and the lining being too tight. She bent over and it just split. I closed my eyes, not with smugness, not with satisfaction, with calm, with understanding. The storm had arrived. Claire was still talking. "The designer's boutique is closed for the weekend. They tried to call the backup stylist, but she's at another wedding across town. The seamstress won't pick up, and Savannah is freaking out." Pause. "Do you have anything? Like, could you maybe help?" There it was. The moment. The plea. Not from my mother, not from Savannah, but it didn't matter. I could have said no. I could have told them to figure it out on their own, but I didn't. Because no matter how they treated me, I was still a professional. And more importantly, I was still me. Calm, capable, creative. "I have something," I said. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Lena overheard the call from the kitchen. She didn't even wait for me to explain. She just nodded, grabbed the steamer, and helped me prep the dress. "You were made for this moment," she whispered. "Go show them." I carefully packed the gown into its bag, zipped it up, and took a deep breath. Not because I was nervous, because I was ready. I arrived at the wedding venue just after noon. It was a sprawling estate on the edge of the city. Manicured gardens, white columns, champagne flutes lined up on silver trays. The kind of place my family loved, fancy enough to impress, but not so exclusive it felt unattainable. A young wedding planner spotted me from the driveway. Her expression changed when she saw the garment bag in my hands. "You're the designer?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes, I'm Alina." Inside, the bridal suite was chaos. People moving everywhere. The energy was frantic, voices sharp with panic. And there, in the center of it all, was Savannah. Wrapped in a robe, mascara smudged, red-faced and furious. My mom stood behind her, snapping at someone on the phone, her voice dripping with stress. When they saw me, everything stopped. For a moment, no one said a word. Then Savannah's eyes dropped to the bag I was holding. "Is that a dress?" I held it out gently. "It is. I think it might be exactly what you need." She didn't move. She just stared, wide-eyed, like she wasn't sure if this was a dream or a trap. My mom cleared her throat, trying to regain control. You made this?" I met her eyes calmly. "Yes, I did. It wasn't just a dress. It was the moment everything turned. They had built a perfect event without me. But when it all began to unravel, I was the one holding the thread. I didn't rush to unzip the garment bag. I let the moment hang in the air, thick with disbelief, confusion, and something else. Something new. Respect. Or maybe it was just the first flicker of it, the kind that shows up when someone realizes they've made a very big mistake. Savannah was still sitting in the makeup chair, silent, a robe wrapped tightly around her as if it could shield her from the disaster she was facing. Her original gown, the expensive, over-designed one she'd raved about for months, lay discarded on the couch, torn at the waist and beyond saving. My mom finally broke the silence. "You made this?" she asked again, slower this time, like she couldn't quite believe it. I nodded. "Yes, it's one of my originals. I designed it a few weeks ago." She blinked, eyes narrowing slightly. "For who?" I met her stare with a quiet strength I didn't know I had. "For me. I didn't know if I'd ever wear it, but I made it because I needed to remind myself that I could." The room was still. Even the stylists stopped fussing with their brushes and hairspray. Savannah shifted in her chair, suddenly unsure of everything. She looked at me. Not past me, not through me. At me, maybe for the first time in years. "What does it look like?" she asked, voice softer now, almost small. I stepped forward and slowly unzipped the bag, revealing the dress. It glowed under the soft overhead lights, a pale, icy blue charmeuse that draped like liquid moonlight. The neckline was clean, timeless. The silhouette was classic with a slight modern edge, hugging at just the right places before falling into an effortless cascade at the hem. It didn't scream for attention. It whispered luxury, confidence, grace. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Savannah whispered, "It's beautiful." It wasn't a compliment. It was a realization. I walked over and gently held it up against her body. The color made her skin look luminous. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine in the mirror. "You think it'll fit?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "I know it will. I made it for someone who deserved to be seen." Another silence. And then, almost like she was afraid to breathe too hard and ruin it, Savannah nodded. "Okay, let's try it." I helped her slip out of the robe and into the dress. The room watched with bated breath as the gown slid over her shoulders and down her waist, molding perfectly to her shape as if it had been designed just for her. When she turned to the mirror, she gasped. It was everything her original dress wasn't. Graceful, modern, elegant, and entirely unexpected. And that's when the real power shift happened. The room, which had once treated me like an afterthought, now revolved around me. My mom stepped forward and gently touched the fabric. "You made this? You really made this?" I nodded again, simply. "Yes." She looked like she wanted to say something else. Maybe apologize, maybe cover up months of rejection with a hasty compliment. But nothing came out. She just stepped back, quietly stunned. Then the wedding planner, who had been watching from the doorway, spoke. "I've worked with dozens of designers. This is couture-level work." Savannah turned around slowly, her hands smoothing the fabric, her voice quiet but clear. "I never knew you were this good." I looked her in the eyes. "You never asked." She swallowed hard. There wasn't anger in my voice, just truth, and that truth was suddenly undeniable. I wasn't the quirky little sister anymore. I wasn't the family embarrassment. I wasn't the girl who had nothing to wear. I was the one who saved the day, not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I was ready. While they were busy curating perfection, I had become the real thing. And now, standing in that bridal suite, surrounded by silk and silence and stunned stares, I had everything they'd once told me I lacked: poise, power, purpose. I didn't need their praise, but in that moment, I knew I'd earned it. And whether they said it aloud or not, they knew it too. For a few minutes after Savannah put the dress on, the bridal suite fell completely still. No one moved. No one even breathed too loudly. It was the kind of silence that only happens when something bigger than words is happening, when people realize that the version of reality they've been clinging to has just cracked wide open. My mother was the first to speak, but only barely. She cleared her throat and took a slow step toward me, her voice strangely level. "Alina, where did you learn to do this?" It wasn't a compliment. Not exactly. It was more like disbelief trying to disguise itself as interest. I turned toward her calmly. "I've been doing it. You just weren't paying attention." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She had no comeback, no witty deflection. For once, my mother, the queen of social control, was at a loss. Savannah, on the other hand, was staring at herself in the mirror like she couldn't decide if this was real or not. Her eyes moved from her reflection to the dress, to me and back again. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Better than the other one. I mean, it actually fits. It doesn't pull. The neckline is—" She stopped, as if catching herself from saying too much. But it was already out there. The designer dress she paid thousands for couldn't hold up. The sister she excluded from the wedding came in and fixed everything, effortlessly. Her silence wasn't angry. It wasn't even defensive. It was reverent. There was a knock at the door. One of the bridesmaids poked her head in and asked if everything was okay. Someone behind her muttered, "Is the dress still ruined?" And that's when Savannah stood straighter and answered loud and clear, "No, it's fixed. My sister made me something even better." There it was. My sister. The title I hadn't heard her use in months. The room shifted with that sentence. The planner raised her eyebrows. The bridesmaids exchanged surprised glances. My mother's shoulders stiffened, like someone had just reminded her of something she hoped people would forget, that I was family. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me. The planner asked for my business card. A bridesmaid asked if I did custom pieces for non-weddings. Someone else commented on the stitching and structure like she knew what she was talking about. I answered politely, but stayed centered. I wasn't there for applause. I was there because I saw a sinking ship and decided, for my own sake, not theirs, to throw a lifeline. But the real shift, the one that mattered, came in the form of my mother's silence. She hovered near the makeup table, arms crossed tightly, eyes flitting between me and Savannah, trying to process the fact that everything she'd built up around her perfect daughter was now being upstaged by the daughter she tried to erase. She didn't apologize. Of course not. But she didn't mock me either. She didn't roll her eyes or brush it off. She looked rattled. That was new. And in that silence, I realized something important. I didn't need her apology anymore. Because the consequence of their betrayal wasn't just me walking away hurt. It was them being left unprepared for a disaster they couldn't solve, and having to rely on the one person they underestimated the most. They thought I had nothing to offer. No value, no elegance. And now here I was holding the entire wedding together in my hands. My father arrived a few minutes later. He looked confused when he saw me in the room, garment bag empty beside me. "Alina?" he said, like he wasn't sure if he should be surprised or impressed. Savannah turned to him. "Her dress saved me, Dad. The other one ripped. She brought this." She turned to me again. "And it's perfect." He gave me a look I'd seen before, that awkward, too-late fatherly pride. The kind that says, "I always believed in you but never actually showed it." I didn't need that either. Because this wasn't about validation anymore. This was about truth, finally standing taller than appearance. This was about me stepping into a room they had tried to keep locked. And instead of knocking, I walked right through the door they left open by mistake and changed the entire energy. I didn't gloat. I didn't demand apologies. I didn't need to. The consequences were already written all over their faces. Not just shock, not just regret, but respect. And it tasted better than any "I'm sorry" ever could. The ceremony was starting in less than an hour, but inside the bridal suite, time felt like it had slowed to a crawl. The chaos had quieted. The voices had softened. And I could finally breathe. Savannah was ready, not just in the sense that her hair and makeup were done or that she had a bouquet in her hands. She looked calm, graceful, even. My dress fit her perfectly, moving with her like a second skin. As she turned and studied herself in the mirror, I caught something in her face I hadn't seen in years: humility. For the first time in our lives, she looked at me without comparison, without competition, without superiority, just gratitude. "Alina," she said, walking up to me, holding the skirt of the gown carefully in one hand. "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I don't think anyone else could have done this. I don't think anyone else would have." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry," she added, eyes glassy. I nodded. I believed her. But what surprised me was that I didn't need it. Not really. That moment of apology I had imagined played over and over in my head. It came, but it didn't feel like a climax. It felt like an afterthought, a confirmation of what I already knew. I had already won something so much bigger. Standing there in that room, surrounded by people who once saw me as a joke, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't carrying the weight of trying to prove them wrong. Because I had stopped living for their permission. I had started living for myself. The success, the recognition, even Savannah's apology, they were nice, but they weren't the victory. The victory was the journey. It was staying up all night sketching ideas no one would ever see. It was sewing dresses in silence when no one was watching. It was the tears I cried in the privacy of my bedroom when I was excluded from the wedding, and the strength I found the next morning when I got back up and kept going. It was choosing to answer the phone when they called, not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted to show up for me. That day, I saw my past and future standing in the same room. My past was in the faces of the people who had always doubted me, who had laughed behind my back or dismissed my dreams as just a hobby. My future stood in the mirror, wrapped in charmeuse and quiet power, a reflection of everything I'd created from the ground up. And in that moment, I understood something I had never fully grasped before. Revenge isn't getting even. Revenge is outgrowing the need for it. It's waking up one day and realizing that their absence from your life no longer feels like a hole. It feels like space. Space you filled with your own voice, your own vision, your own value. After the final touch-ups, the bridesmaids shuffled out to line up for the ceremony. My mom lingered behind, hesitating. I saw it in her eyes. The inner struggle between pride and discomfort, between wanting to say something and not knowing how. "I suppose," she said slowly, "it's lucky you came." I tilted my head. Number. "It's not luck. It's who I am." She didn't reply, just nodded once and turned away. And I didn't need more than that. She could keep her discomfort. I had peace. As I packed up my sewing kit and zipped up the empty garment bag, I looked around the room one last time. The same room where I'd been an afterthought only an hour earlier was now one I was leaving with my head high, my work admired, and my soul intact. That was the inner victory. Not the dress, not the praise, but the quiet knowing that I hadn't changed for them. I had simply become the version of myself that was always waiting to emerge. Savannah would walk down the aisle looking beautiful. My dress would be in the photos, in the memories, maybe even in the stories she'd tell her future children. But I didn't need the spotlight, because the light I'd found within myself was brighter than anything they could ever shine on me. And I wasn't walking out of that room empty-handed. I was walking out with something far more valuable: clarity, confidence, and the unshakable truth that I belonged. Not because they said so, but because I decided I did. I didn't stay for the wedding ceremony. Once Savannah was dressed and everything was back on track, I quietly slipped out of the bridal suite. No dramatic exits, no spotlight farewells. Just me, my garment bag, and a steady sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. The planner offered me a front row seat as a thank you. My mom mumbled something about me staying for the pictures. Even Savannah asked, "Are you sure you don't want to stay?" But I was sure. I hadn't come for the wedding. I'd come because someone needed help. And I could help. That part was done. Besides, I didn't need to watch them walk down an aisle I'd never been invited to. I didn't need to sit at a reception table and pretend we were one big, happy family. I had nothing left to prove. Still, as I walked down the hall toward the parking lot, the sound of soft organ music echoing behind me, I felt something shift again. A final, quiet wave of peace. I didn't realize how much weight I had been carrying until it was gone. That evening, I went back to my apartment and curled up on the couch with Lena, a bowl of popcorn between us and a movie neither of us really watched. I was content. More than content, I felt whole. And then 2 days later, something surprising happened. I got a knock on the door. It was Nana June. She stood there with a small box in her hand and an expression that made it clear she wasn't here by accident. "I figured you might not answer your phone," she said with a wry smile. "So I brought this in person." She came inside, her eyes scanning the room like she was taking in every detail. The sketches pinned to the wall, the half-finished dress on the mannequin, the spools of thread and fabric swatches on the table. "You've made yourself a little empire in here," she said, quietly. "Your own kingdom." I offered her tea, but she waved it off. "I won't stay long. Just wanted to say a few things." She set the box down on the table. "I know your mother can be difficult, and I know what they did. What they didn't do hurt you. Deeply. I saw it. I felt it." I didn't interrupt. I just let her speak. "I also saw how you handled it. With grace, with strength. You didn't scream or fall apart or make it about revenge. You just showed up, quietly, completely, and you saved them when they didn't deserve it." Her voice wavered slightly. "That's the kind of character you can't teach. That's who you are." She slid the box toward me. "Open it." Inside was a folded piece of paper and a necklace, a delicate chain with a tiny sewing machine charm. "It was mine when I was young," she said. "I thought I'd become a seamstress once, but life took me elsewhere. You actually did it. You took what they mocked and turned it into gold." I stared at the necklace, blinking back tears I didn't expect. "And one more thing," she added. "Savannah wanted me to tell you something." That made me pause. She said she was wrong. About you. About everything. She said you made her feel like a bride when she thought her whole day was ruined. That your dress made her feel safe. It was quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, "And she hopes you'll talk again someday. No pressure, just someday." I nodded slowly. Maybe, someday. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't want to hold on to the pain. I didn't want to punish them. They were flawed, yes, maybe selfish, but they were human, and just like me, they were learning. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing. Freeing myself from the weight of resentment. Freeing them from my expectations. Freeing our story to be rewritten, if not as sisters and mothers and daughters, then at least as people trying to be better. As Nana June hugged me goodbye, she whispered, "You're the strongest one in this family. They just haven't figured it out yet." But I had, and that was enough. The week after the wedding passed quietly. No family drama. No follow-up messages from my mom. No dramatic outbursts or attempts to rewrite what had happened. It was almost as if they didn't quite know what to say, so they chose to say nothing at all. And honestly, that was fine by me. I wasn't waiting by the phone. I wasn't checking my notifications to see if anyone tagged me in the wedding photos. I didn't need to be part of their story anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I was fully living in mine. The blue dress, the one that had saved the wedding and changed everything, stayed with me. Savannah had offered to pay me for it. I declined. Then she tried to return it, saying it belonged in my collection. I declined again. "It's yours," I told her, "but I'd love for you to tell people who made it." That was all I wanted. Not money, not praise, not some Instagram shout-out, just truth. The truth of who I was, what I was capable of, and the journey I had taken to get here. That dress, in a way, had been my silent manifesto, a single piece of fabric molded into power. But my story wasn't about that one gown. It was about every quiet choice that led to it. The early mornings I spent teaching myself to sew while Savannah went to brunch. The nights I stitched fabric under dim lights while the rest of the world scrolled through wedding checklists. The rejection emails. The client who ghosted. The family who turned their back and said I had nothing to wear. They weren't my villains. They were my forge. They pushed me out of their world and in doing so, forced me to build my own. And what I built, it was just beginning. The site Lena helped me launch? Orders started flooding in, not in overwhelming numbers, but enough to show me that there was momentum, that the fire was catching. One bride posted a photo in one of my gowns and tagged me, then another. Then a small influencer reached out asking if she could feature my designs in a lookbook. I said yes, of course I said yes. But the biggest thing that happened? I stopped hiding. No more talking about my work like it was a side hustle. No more brushing off compliments. No more downplaying my talent to keep other people comfortable. I was a designer, a business owner, an artist, and I started walking like it. People noticed. Strangers started sending messages saying things like, "Your dresses feel like poetry," or "I've never seen something so elegant and fierce at the same time." I even got an email from a boutique in Austin asking if I'd consider a small in-store feature. Me, the girl with nothing to wear. And that was the moment it hit me fully. The ending wasn't the wedding. It wasn't the dress. It wasn't the moment they realized they were wrong. It was this. Waking up every morning, choosing myself, designing not just garments, but a life I could be proud of. I didn't need the family spotlight anymore. I'd made my own light. One that glowed from within and poured into everything I touched. There's something powerful about becoming the version of yourself you used to dream of, not to prove anyone wrong, but to finally feel right in your own skin. Today, my apartment still looks like a tornado of thread and fabric. Lena still drinks tea next to me while I pin patterns to mannequins and curse invisible zippers. We're building a new studio space together, something small, cozy, creative. A place where women can come, try on something beautiful, and leave feeling even more so. And every time someone walks in and says, "I heard about you from a friend," I smile, because that's the legacy I care about. Not revenge, not redemption, but recognition, the kind that comes from becoming. So no, I didn't get a bouquet. I didn't toss rice or take family photos, but I did walk away with something even more meaningful, the confidence to take up space, the courage to keep creating, and the peace of knowing I don't need their approval, because I have my own. And if that's not a perfect ending, I don't know what is.